A group of smaller parties, including Build One South Africa and the United Democratic Movement, have written to the Chief Justice to facilitate a meeting on a government of national unity. The group says the meeting must serve as a platform for fostering a transparent, collaborative agenda for South Africa. Well, BOSA leader Mmusi Maimane joins us now for more. Good evening, sir. Thanks very much for your time. Well, from what the ANC president told us last night, everyone's invited. Why the need to write to the Chief Justice?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. First and foremost, I think we're putting the cart before the horse. What is the agenda of the people of South Africa? Now, there are a couple of things that we can take lead from. The first is the Constitution and the institutions that come from the Constitution and the objectives that are ascribed in that Constitution. So the ideals of saying you'll provide housing, you'll provide a job, you'll make sure that there's economic prosperity, that must be the framing issue. And then after that, once you've agreed on that timetable as to how you want to achieve those and proceed to govern towards those things, then only can you talk about a government of national unity. Talking about it before, at the invitation of the ANC, means that the agenda of the ANC is what's central to this issue.
Well, two things. One is that the conversations, as far as I understand, haven't gone there yet. The talks have been exploratory to see who's willing to come on board. And only thereafter will the teams, including the technical teams, then get into the detail, exactly the issues that you're talking about. And then secondly, there is, or seems to be, certainly among or from the Democratic Alliance, for example, an acceptance that the biggest party of them all should be given the right to decide whether, and if so, with who, to get into some working arrangement with.
Well, then don't call it then a government of national unity. Then call it coalition talks amongst the ANC and its own partners. It's not a government of national unity. A government of national unity, if you want to take the 94 model, you must concede at that point that the ANC had nearly a two-thirds majority and therefore could invite whomever it wanted, and if the person left, then it wouldn't change the configuration of government. Other countries that do GNUs, for example, I can look at Kenya. It looks at electoral results and then decide the leading party can then invite others, but there's a winner. In this instance, there is no outright majority. So any arrangement is a function of a grand coalition rather than calling it a government of national unity. If you actually want, and to your point, you say those things are technical, but they're actually fundamental.
No, I said they're technical. I said the technical teams.
No, but what I'm
then,
I want to allude
the detail of that.
To the fact that in the absence of a clarion, here are the 10 things that actually we're setting up. All these preliminary talks that you are alluding to have fundamentally been about positions and how you add up the numbers to get over the line. And to me, I think that is the easy part of the conversation. Actually, I'm not going to say I will give you my numbers without actually ever knowing, will I endorse corruption? How will we fix ESCOM? How do we ensure Transnet is working? Those are fundamental. And then when we talk position, I can say actually the best minister of transport is actually from that party, or the best minister of education is from that party. That's a better conversation to have than if you want to have a structure that is not following the function. Create the function, and then you can work the structure from there.
But then, I mean, if you're looking at how many parties have made it to Parliament, yours and, of course, those others that you wrote this letter with, that includes the ACDP, the ATM, the PAC, the UAT, and, excuse me, the UDM. All of you polled, fairly poorly in the election, would you not accept that perhaps you can play a better role outside of those big parties that seem, or have expressed at least, a willingness to work together? Of course, some insisting that they can only do so without the others. You saw Floyd Shivambu, what he said just now. You had John Steenhuisen a day or two ago or so. Do you not feel that you'll perhaps play a better role outside?
I have maintained and will still maintain. The people who voted for BOSA said to me, Mmusi, go represent us in Parliament so that you can build one South Africa, you can fight for the issues we fight for. They never said, only do that when you're in government. They said, do that in Parliament. Parliament has an equal stance of all members. Furthermore to this issue, I want us to be clear. The flaw with GNUs is that they often don't have an opposition. Ask Zimbabwe, formed a GNU in 2007, 2008, and now look at where Zimbabwe is at. So yes, I agree, let the big parties form the government. But if you choose to not opt into a GNU, do so not because you've got personality issues or you've got party issues. Do so because you say, this agenda is not the agenda that will serve 60 million people. And then furthermore say, I will play a very active role in opposition to make sure that government is held accountable, that government, if it does constructive things, I will endorse it. Okay. But if it doesn't, it must be held accountable. Because if we fail at that task, we are going to go into 5 years of people who have a sofa-slatlane arrangement, if which after 5 years, the net consequence of it is that South Africa may not necessarily be better off.
Why then did you write to the Chief Justice? What is it exactly that you want?
We ask him to play a convening role so that the leaders that are going to Parliament can sit and discuss a plan. Whether we agree or disagree on that plan needs to be harmonized because that plan emanates from the Constitution. And then we can say, yes, we agree, here's the plan, therefore form a GNU, or no, actually the plan is unworkable. What is the plan right now?
But this is someone who leads another arm of the state, and not just any arm, but one that you may end up having to go to in the event there are disputes or this matter is not handled as well as it perhaps can be handled.
As things stand at the moment, the Chief Justice will convene Parliament when it opens. The Chief Justice has the list that is coming before them. And therefore, we're not asking the Chief Justice to give a political program. We are asking him to facilitate emanating from the Constitution. That's all we're asking. Because he can't swear in people that A will say, we don't agree with the Constitution, in the sense that we think the Constitution must be eradicated. That means you are going to have an institution that is given power from the Constitution, not being able to function at its optimal level. So that's all they ask. We had a long debate even at the meeting, whether the Secretary to Parliament must convene the meeting, all of that kind of thing. But it is really coming out of a spirit of saying, let's find the body that is tasked of preserving what sits as our national consensus at the moment, which is the Constitution, and go from there. If that body is the African National Congress, which is what's happening at the moment, everyone is going, let's go meet with the ANC, then you can appreciate that the manifesto that then is dominant is then the ANC's manifesto. And if that's what we think, then we must be clear. It's not a GNU, or it's not bringing together for an agenda for South Africa. It's the ANC asking people to help it stay in power. Let's call it that. I have no problem with that formation, but call it what it is, and not try and tell South Africa that this is somewhat a conceived plan by all South Africans so for its own future. My only interest in this conversation is 60 million South Africans. I'm not interested in any position. I'm interested in making sure that Parliament works, ensuring that South Africa's interests are put forward, and ultimately that our Constitution gives us guidance that in 5 years we could say we're living a better South Africa than we had up to now.
The Chief Justice says no for whatever reason.
If the Chief Justice doesn't want to have that meeting, he is one of the facilitators. We could have another one. But I still think a conversation is necessary, because I think the convener of that will give us some guidance as to how we achieve these objectives for South Africa.
Mr. Mmusi Maimane, thanks very much for coming through.
Always a pleasure.